Hi, everybody. It's Jackie Schwab back with a Press Plate Lifestyle Inspired podcast where we do interviews with people like my new friend here, Brandon, on topics to help you find the resources, tools, and support you need to be your best inspired selves. How are you today, Brandon?
I'm so good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's sunny in Milwaukee, which anyone from Milwaukee knows is beautiful. Beautiful.
Good.
So I'm super excited that you took the time to be with us today. You're quite the man in demand. So it's nice to have you. Do you mind telling the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Kneefel. And basically right now I call myself a medium healer. So I use my mediumship and clairvoyance to initiate energetic healing. And I basically rely on, my concept of a higher power. You can call it spirit, universe, love. I just call it God to keep it simple. So I pretty much just walk with God through the healing process, and I'm told what to do.
Wow, that's beautiful. Can you tell us about one of your, I don't know if there's a favorite healing, because how can you not be thrilled about healing?
For sure.
It feels amazing, but something that was really memorable for you that just super sits with you still and is like a strong experience that you've had as a healer.
Sure. So actually, I did one last night that was pretty powerful. And I have surprisingly a lot of male clients. So that's really important to me because I think this is, I think the women in this world are doing a lot of their inner work. And so I'm trying to get a lot of the men to do that as well. As opposed to like the wives or girlfriends being like, come on, let's do something.
You're like, okay.
So I begin by, doing a read on them. So it's either like a medical intuitive read, or with their permission, I read their subconscious beliefs. And I literally start from there, and it's just rapid fire questions so they don't have time to think. And then I use different modalities depending on what spirit gives me. And sometimes it's literally like, okay, would you mind your concept of a higher power coming into you and speaking through you? And so if I see that they're speaking through their mind, I say cancel. I'm like, was that spirit talking or was that you talking?
Yeah.
And then they eventually get the process. And I know when I'm halfway through when they start crying and they really have a moment. And then we work on the integration and wrap them up. So there's no time limit. Some people take an hour and a half. Some people take 4 hours. But it's my goal to get them to a breakthrough. Unlike sometimes traditional therapy, it can take months and years, but I don't want to leave them off at 50 minutes where they're open in like an open wound and then be like, I'll see you next week.
Yeah, and I think I've seen that too. So being in kind of the coaching space as well, I know they're different, but
Sure.
Having that connection, one of the worst things we can do is really like dig up some of that trauma or dig up, a piece that needs healing. And then we're like, peace out, yo, I got brunch, or whatever the case is. So I know
and they're walking around with an open wound for the rest of the week.
Essentially. And sometimes then they don't come back, right? Because you've cut them and then left them bleeding. And now that's how we showed up in the world, right? Is
exactly.
Kind of wound them, people we thought we were helping.
Yeah.
So it was particularly powerful, you said last night. So what was so powerful for you? Was there something that came through?
Yeah.
Or was it a 5-hour thing, or what made it experiential?
Yeah, this person was self-aware and a high performer. So I had no information on what we were going to do when I started speaking to him. And he started talking about his mother and wanting to get her back to the family in Argentina. But this was at the front of his mind. Mm-hmm. And I knew this wasn't his thing. I knew this is not what he needed to deal with. And I always say, the first thing is not the thing. that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
It's the thing that keeps us safe, and we're like, okay, I can deal with this. So right away, I was like, all right, so let's put your mom aside and talk about your loneliness. And then so we worked through that really, really in depth. And we were able to tie his inability to have a long-term relationship with his traumatic experience with his family and coming out as gay. And we were able to tie that into his need to be ambitious and stay away from his family long term and to continue to prove himself. So, and his grandmother came through from the other side, and she stated that she was rooting for him and on his side, and that she just didn't want him to be alone. So he finally felt like someone on his family side was understanding him and seeing him for who he was.
Oh, so he just wanted to feel, isn't like one of the most significant needs that people have is just that need to, like it's the birthrights, right? One of them's like existing, but one of them is feeling like you belong. And if you're actually shunned from the people that are supposed to always allow you to belong, that's a huge break for people.
Huge.
It's like everything from that moment on builds broken because you've shaken that foundation of who you are.
Right. Then you start developing relationship strategies that are in line with that wound. So it's like, this Band-Aid will make it not hurt as much. I'm going to do as much and support as many people as possible so they don't leave me.
So what does your client do with that after they kind of have the breakthrough and they maybe not feeling so raw now, they feel supported? Is there maintenance work that they need to do, or like how do they integrate and stay congruent with like these new things that have been given to them?
So I usually channel a mantra for them. Sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. What we're working with is the subconscious mind, because I believe that we don't attract what we think and feel. We attract around our worthiness and subconscious beliefs. So I can attract relationships if I have a self-belief that I'm worthy of relationships, but I might not feel worthy of money, so I might not attract that. So I work with their subconscious mind. I actually go in there and stay with their child self and try to reprogram that and recreate a situation in which that wound never happened. So I always say it's forgiveness work, because forgiveness is remembering what didn't happen. So basically telling a different story from childhood on. And so I give them the mantra and they go off in their week and they can check in with me. But oftentimes I get reports back months later that they're like, I don't know how you did that, but it worked. And I was like, you and your spirit did it. I was just asking the questions and pointing things out. But I really do encourage them to do at least one assignment afterward to kind of integrate it in the real world. So this last one, with his mother hurting him so badly, I had him write a gratitude letter to her on how that pushed him into the man that he is, which is a great man.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that people forget too, is that it sucks that we have these wounds, but these wounds are also who made us, like part of what made us, right? So we need them to grow, but we don't have to hold them forever. At some point, they stop you from growing, right? They become the thing that keeps you stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always say, don't be afraid of your wounds, because if you were perfect, you wouldn't have any areas in which other people could hold on to. So it's like those parts of you that are cut out that people can grab onto when they're looking for hope. So if people see my wound of being a recovering alcoholic, they're like, I can grab onto that. I can relate to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard it kind of said like that before. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
It's kind of like the Japanese art of when they feel a pot is only beautiful after it's been broken, and they feel the broken parts with
Oh,
gold.
wow. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I was like, that
I'll
is
take
so
gold.
awesome. Yeah, we'll take the gold too, right? Yeah, but it's like it's actually an art in Japan where they honestly say that they in this group that they don't feel that it's done or
Mm,
beautiful until it's been broken and had to fix
wow.
the scars. So it's kind of
Wow.
yeah, it's like beautiful, right?
That's so beautiful.
There's so many wonderful things that we just don't have time, or there's so many things to learn that not we can't possibly ever know all of those things, right?
For sure.
So how are these types of abilities that you have you always had them, or are they something like someone taught you? How does this come about?
Sure. I grew up in an evangelical Christian family, so we identify the spiritual gifts of the Spirit, basically, which is mentioned in First Corinthians, and it's you know, abilities to heal, abilities to communicate with spirit and translate spirit, and prophecy. So I developed claircognizance really early on. So claircognizance is just clear knowing without knowing how you know. And then I pushed it aside as in because I thought I was just like a smarter than average kid. And then I started to realize
I
that I
wasn't
was
arrogant at all.
I know I'm like I'm just really smart. I'm like wait, I didn't know that because I learned it. So and then as I grew older, I started to really understand that spirit was communicating through me to help others. So I then noticed the little things, and I was told by many mediums that I had the abilities, and I was like, no, 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 no. And then finally, I was brought on stage by a medium after I did a little panel, and she's like, "You're reading the next person because you have the same gifts I do." I'm like, "Wait, what?" And this is a college, like a room full of college students, and so I just like dove in after that, and what I do now is I hold monthly groups where for free I teach people how to develop their gifts. People who were like, I'm really connected with my higher power, but I don't think I have any gifts. I'm like, you know what? We are not created special. If one person can communicate with their higher power or spirit, then we all have access to it. So it's just the trust that you are hearing or knowing from other than your like prefrontal cortex.
Right.
So I teach different techniques, and you know a lot of those people who started coming with no concept of their abilities are now doing that like as a side gig.
Nice.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've always kind of said is and I was raised Catholic, so very similar, but I think that if God created everyone in his image, then we're all perfect.
Exactly.
And we just are presenting different parts of that. And it was really important to me growing up with, we grew up very poor. We lived in a car for a while. We
Oh
moved
wow.
around a lot. And it can easily make you kind of go like, well, I'm less than, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
less than because of whatever your because of is. Like you could have felt that as a recovering alcoholic. Well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
less than because I allowed myself to whatever. But we're all perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and not perfectly imperfect. Like that's super cliche.
I
We
know.
just are. Like we're
Exactly.
made to be exactly
Right.
who we are.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes, yes, yes. I know. Like, it's amazing when people are like, I'm flawed, but I'm loved. It's like, if you saw yourself the way God saw you, you are perfect, whole, and complete. God is looking down on us like we're children in a playground. Sometimes we spill the sand, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we trip over like the sandbox, sometimes we don't. God's not saying, oh, there's a flaw, there's a flaw. It's like they're playing, and we aren't trying to be perfect. We are actively working on realizing that we are. And that's self-worth, knowing that, okay, my worth is not debatable. It cannot be subtracted to or added to. It is there because I am an extension of God. I am as much God as someone else. I'm not all of God, but I am all God.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's very powerful. I think it's so wonderful for people to come from a place of innate worthiness, like you just are, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can be, and your just being is beautiful.
Yeah. And when you show up like that, you leave people feeling inspired by themselves because they can't help but see their awe in themselves. So it's not like show up and be like miraculous and amazing to other people. It's like show up as a conduit for others to realize their awesomeness.
Yeah, I say I don't say it as articulate as you do, but I always say my job is to hold space for how amazing you are until you can catch up and realize it, right?
No, that's beautiful. I mean, that's more simply put than me, so it's easier to understand, I feel like.
Fair enough, but yeah, I love the idea that um we're not broken. It just makes me sad when people feel like that there's something wrong with them for being, right? There can be something, you can do things that are not acceptable, or you can
Hmm.
behave in a ways that you don't like. But even what society deems acceptable, how do you know if that's naughty or not? That's a societal construct,
Yeah.
right? How many years ago were there racists? How many years ago where you couldn't get married if you were a same-sex
Hmm.
couple? Society said that that was bad.
Right.
But now, right now, some people are being more open. How can you be bad if you just are being who you were created to be?
Right. And it's as soon, like you said, as soon as you realize your self-worth, you are doing better and treating yourself more healthy and realizing that you're perfect. It's when we step out of our self-worth as it's almost, it's not arrogant to believe that you are of God. It's humble. It's humility to say, I cannot change who I am by my effort or dint of labor. And I love the part where you talked about living in your car, because during that time, I'm sure your self-worth wasn't very high, but in hindsight, I'm sure it added to your self-worth as a way to communicate compassionately and to identify with other people who are going through that. So that experience created a greater capacity for you to love others. Like that was a perfect situation at the end of the day.
Yeah, one of the things I've always said is I am exactly who I am because of everything I've been through, and I wouldn't change a thing. And there are some pretty dang doozies, but without that was like I wouldn't be able to show up. So
Yeah.
gosh, I wish we could talk forever. This is super fun. How can people find you and like help share in the gifts that you have? Like, what's the best way for them to contact you or to share in your services? Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I do healings and readings in person and over video chat. They work just as effectively either way. I'm very active on Instagram, so I'm constantly posting stories and experiences from my life. And my website is very interactive with ways to book or even like information to learn about.
Okay.
Both are just my first and last name, BrandonKneefel.com and Brandon Kneefel on Instagram. And, at the end of the day, my goal is to teach and inspire others how to really feel like they're superhuman, that they're God consciousness.
That's beautiful. So we'll
Oh,
make sure. Go ahead.
I also, I sent a link. So if you would like to download my first book that was a bestseller, it is called Defining Moments and Prayers to Guide Them. So it's prayers or affirmative prayers for anything that you could possibly go through, from love and sex to money and grief, addiction and mental health issues. So I offer that as a gift to anyone. There's a link to my site. You can just download it as a PDF.
Wonderful. So we'll make sure the show notes has your website, your IG handle, all of the information on the book download, so that way everyone can come experience the gifts that you were given to share
Thank
with
you.
others.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that thank you for the work you're doing. It's really powerful. I went on your website. you have such a beautiful story, sending love to your child, and you have
you.
you have a couple like angels around you right now, and one is up in your left hand corner of the or by the ceiling, and it's literally just communicating from God that you are doing it. You are doing the work of the angels down here.
Oh, thank you. I
You're
appreciate that
welcome.
so much.
You're
I'm
welcome.
I'm doing what you're doing. I'm just trying to give people an opportunity to share and be visible and access, because someone needs to hear you right now.
Thank
So
you so much for having me.
you're welcome. It was so wonderful meeting you, and we should stay in touch. So I'm sure
I
you'll
would
write
love
more
to.
books and do other great things.
Yes, yes, for sure.
All right. See you
All right,
later.
hon. Bye, hon.